Beloved friends, let us turn our hearts to the word of the Lord in book of Isaiah 4:39-90. Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall ye not know it? I will even make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. Now notice, he did not say, I might do it. He said, I will do a new thing. God speaks in certainty. Man speaks in possibility. But when God declares a thing, heaven backs it up. When God begins to move in a person's life, it rarely starts with something visible. We are creatures of sight. We measure progress by what we can observe, calculate, or confirm. But the kingdom of God does not operate according to human measurement. In book of Isaiah 43:19, the Lord declares, Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall ye not know it? Notice that the springing forth happens before they fully recognize it. The movement of God often begins before human awareness catches up. Consider a seed planted in the ground. The moment it is placed beneath the soil, it seems buried, hidden, and forgotten. If you return the next day, there is no visible change. A week later, still nothing. To the natural eye, the seed appears inactive. Yet beneath the surface, a quiet miracle is unfolding. The shell is breaking. Roots are pushing downward. Life is establishing itself in darkness before it ever reaches for the light. The most critical stage of growth happens, where no one can see it. In the same way, when God plants a promise in your life, He begins working in realms you cannot observe. The breaking, shaping, aligning, and preparing happen in silence. Many people become discouraged because they expect immediate evidence. They pray once and expect instant transformation. They believe once and expect instant manifestation. But divine processes are not microwave moments. They are covenant unfoldings. There are forces being arranged, circumstances being shifted, hearts being softened, and paths being cleared beyond your line of sight. Just because your environment looks unchanged does not mean heaven is unmoved. Often, the delay you feel is actually divine orchestration. Think about the moments before dawn. The darkest hour does not signal the absence of the sun. It signals its approach. The earth is already turning toward the light long before the first ray appears on the horizon. In your own life, there may be movements you cannot detect, subtle changes in timing, positioning, and opportunity. What appears as stagnation may actually be alignment. What feels like silence may be preparation. God's work in the unseen also strengthens faith. If everything were visible immediately, there would be no room for trust. Faith grows in hidden seasons. It deepens when you choose to believe despite a lack of evidence. The unseen process builds endurance, humility, and dependence. It teaches you to anchor your confidence, not in what you observe, but in what God has spoken. There is also protection in the unseen. When a foundation is being laid for a building, it is poured below ground level. No one applauds it. No one decorates it. Yet without it, the structure would collapse. God sometimes hides His early work in your life to establish stability. He develops character before exposure, resilience before recognition, and depth before display. If the visible breakthrough came before the invisible preparation, it might destroy rather than bless. When you cannot see results, it does not mean you are forgotten. When circumstances appear unchanged, it does not mean prayers are unanswered. Movement does not always make noise. Growth does not always announce itself. Transformation does not always look dramatic in its early stages. But beneath the surface, roots are taking hold. To believe that God is moving before you see results is to shift from sight-based living to promise-based living. It is choosing to trust that what He declared is already in motion. The soil may look still, but life is stirring. The night may feel long, but dawn is advancing. The surface may appear unchanged, but underneath, everything is being prepared for the moment it breaks forth into view. In book of Isaiah 4:30-19, the Lord declares that He will make a way in the wilderness. That statement alone reveals something powerful. The wilderness is not meant to be a permanent dwelling place. It is a passage, not a promise. It is a season, not a settlement. Yet when someone is walking through hardship, isolation, or uncertainty, it is easy to mistake the environment for destiny. The dryness feels endless. The silence feels final. The struggle feels permanent. But the wilderness, by its very nature, is transitional. A wilderness is a place stripped of comfort. It is where familiar supports are removed and visible signs of abundance are scarce. There are no clear roads, no obvious landmarks, no predictable supply. In such a place, a person can begin to question their direction and even their identity. But throughout Scripture, the wilderness has often been a classroom rather than a graveyard. It is where dependence is learned, where distractions are silenced, and where character is refined. What feels like abandonment is often preparation. When people stay too long in a difficult season, they can begin to build emotional homes there. They adapt to survival mode. They lower expectations. They stop dreaming. They accept limitation as normal. The mind starts to say, this is just how life is going to be. But God's declaration interrupts that mindset. If He promises to make a way in the wilderness, then the wilderness cannot be the final chapter. His word implies movement. A way suggests direction, progress, and exit. The danger is not the wilderness itself. The danger is believing it defines you. Hard seasons have a way of whispering lies that you are stuck, that you are forgotten, that nothing will change. But the wilderness does not have authority over your future. It does not determine your worth, your calling, or your outcome. It is simply terrain you are passing through. Just as a traveler crossing a desert does not claim the desert as home, you must resist building your identity around a temporary struggle. There is also purpose in the stripping away. In places of abundance, people can become distracted by excess. In the wilderness, priorities become clear. You learn what truly sustains you. You discover strengths you did not know you had. You hear God more clearly when the noise of comfort is removed. What seems like loss can actually be focus. What feels like delay can actually be strengthening. God does not waste wilderness seasons. Even when the path is unclear, He is shaping endurance and resilience. He is teaching patience and sharpening discernment. He is aligning timing and preparing opportunities beyond the horizon. You may not see the road yet, but the one who promised to make a way is already ahead of you. The wilderness is not proof of divine rejection. It is often evidence of divine direction. Sometimes the very fact that the terrain is uncomfortable means you are in motion. If you were meant to stay, it would feel like settlement. Instead, there is restlessness, a sense that more is coming. That inner stirring is a reminder that the present condition is not the destination. To understand that the wilderness is temporary is to reclaim hope. It shifts perspective from, "This is my life forever," to, "This is a chapter I am walking through." The sand beneath your feet does not cancel the promise over your life. The dryness does not eliminate the future. A way is being formed even now, and every step, though difficult, is leading you closer to a place of fulfillment beyond the wilderness. In book of Isaiah 4:30-19, God promises not only to make a way in the wilderness, but also to create rivers in the desert. A desert is defined by dryness, scarcity, and lack. It is a place where survival itself feels uncertain. To speak of rivers flowing there sounds almost impossible. Yet that is precisely the point. The source of provision in a desert cannot come from the desert itself. It must come from somewhere hidden, somewhere deeper than what the eye can see. When you look at a barren landscape, you do not expect to find abundance. The ground appears cracked, the air heavy, and the horizon empty. If you depended only on what is visible, you would conclude that nothing can grow and nothing can thrive. But rivers are not formed by surface appearances. They originate from springs, underground aquifers, melting snow caps, or distant mountains. Their beginnings are often concealed. The surface may look lifeless, but beneath it, unseen currents can be gathering strength. In the same way, when life feels dry, financially, emotionally, spiritually, it is easy to assume that there is no supply. You may look around at your circumstances and see no opportunity, no support, no clear answer. The temptation is to believe that because your surroundings are barren, your future must be barren too. Yet God's promise challenges that assumption. Provision does not have to arise from your environment. It can flow from a hidden source far greater than what surrounds you. A river in the desert is not gradual improvement. It is divine intervention. It does not depend on favorable conditions. It changes the conditions. When water begins to flow through dry land, it transforms everything in its path. Seeds long buried begin to awaken. Vegetation emerges. Life multiplies. What was once inhospitable becomes fruitful. The river does not ask the desert for permission to exist. It simply flows, altering the environment as it moves. This speaks to a deeper spiritual truth. Your breakthrough is not limited to visible resources. You may not see how restoration can happen, how healing can come, or how doors can open. But the unseen source is not restricted by what you lack. God's provision is not drawn from your weakness. It is drawn from His abundance. What looks empty to you may simply be the stage upon which He demonstrates supply. There is also something powerful about the hiddenness of the source. If every blessing could be traced directly to visible factors, faith would not be required. But when provision comes from unexpected places, when help arrives in unlikely ways, it reveals that the origin is beyond human arrangement. The river's path may be visible once it flows, but its beginning often remains concealed. That hidden origin reminds you that the answer was forming long before you recognized it. Deserts test confidence. They challenge hope. They magnify need, but they also magnify the impact of a river. In a place already full of water, a stream might go unnoticed. In a place of dryness, it becomes a lifeline. Sometimes God allows you to experience a season of apparent lack, so that when the river flows, you recognize its value and source. The promise of rivers in the desert means that no condition is beyond transformation. Your environment does not dictate your destiny. The dryness you feel does not cancel the possibility of overflow. Beneath the surface of your situation, unseen reserves are gathering. What appears empty may be moments away from saturation. The hidden source is real, and when it begins to flow, it will not only meet your need, it will redefine the landscape entirely. In book of Isaiah 4:19, the Lord declares, "Behold, I will do a new thing." That phrase carries both promise and challenge. It promises movement, change, and fresh manifestation. But it also challenges expectation, because when people hear new, they often try to fit it into old patterns. The human mind is conditioned by memory. We understand tomorrow by comparing it to yesterday. Yet when God speaks of doing something new, He is not referring to a repetition with slight improvement. He is speaking of a work that may not resemble what came before. There is comfort in familiarity. When God moves in a certain way, and we experience blessing through a particular channel, we begin to expect that same method again. If He answered through a certain opportunity before, we look for that opportunity again. If He restored through a specific relationship, we expect similar restoration in the same format. But a new thing often bypasses the old framework. It requires openness rather than assumption. The verse even asks, "Shall ye not know it?" That question implies that the new thing could be unfolding while people fail to recognize it. Recognition requires perception beyond habit. If someone insists that the next miracle must look like the last one, they may overlook what is already beginning. The new thing may not match previous timing, structure, or appearance. It may feel unfamiliar at first. It may stretch comfort zones. It may dismantle routines that once felt secure. There is also a subtle danger in living on yesterday's testimony. Past victories are important. They remind you of faithfulness. but they are not meant to become limitations. When someone constantly looks backward, they risk missing forward movement. The God who provided before is not confined to the methods he used then. His creativity is not exhausted by past solutions. What he did was real, but what he is about to do may be greater and different. A new thing also requires release. You cannot fully embrace what is ahead if your hands are tightly holding what is behind. Sometimes people cling to familiar pain, familiar roles, or familiar environments simply because they are known. The unknown feels risky. Yet growth always contains an element of unfamiliarity. When God initiates something new, it may disrupt old definitions. It may change relationships, redirect plans, or shift priorities. That disruption is not necessarily loss. It can be expansion. There is freshness in divine renewal. Just as seasons change in nature, spiritual seasons shift as well. Spring does not look like winter, yet both have purpose. If someone expected blossoms during a snowstorm, they would misunderstand timing. In the same way, when God transitions you into a new season, the signs will differ. What once sustained you may not be the primary source anymore. New responsibilities may emerge. New insights may form. New strength may develop. The beauty of a new thing is that it carries potential beyond past limits. It is not constrained by old disappointments or previous failures. It introduces possibilities not previously imagined. Even if yesterday held pain, the new thing is not defined by that pain. It carries its own identity, its own trajectory, its own promise. To accept that God is doing a new thing is to live with expectancy rather than nostalgia. It is to honor the past without being anchored to it. It is to stay attentive, adaptable, and willing. The new thing may already be sprouting quietly, and recognizing it requires a heart that is not confined to yesterday's blueprint. The idea that the unseen realm governs, the seen challenges the way most people interpret reality. Human perception is anchored in what can be touched, measured, and observed. If something is visible, it feels real. If it cannot be seen, it is often dismissed or doubted. Yet Scripture repeatedly reveals that what is visible is not ultimate. It is the result of forces and decisions originating beyond natural sight. In Book of Isaiah 4:30-19, God speaks of making a way and creating rivers before the people could perceive those paths or waters. The declaration itself precedes manifestation, implying that the true beginning occurs in the unseen. Everything visible has an invisible origin. A building first exists as a thought in the architect's mind before it becomes a structure of steel and stone. A tree begins as a hidden process inside a seed before it stretches into the sky. Even human actions are born from unseen intentions, beliefs, and motivations. The outward form is simply the final stage of a deeper process. In the same way, spiritual realities often take shape long before they become tangible. When facing challenges, it is easy to let visible evidence dictate belief. If circumstances look unchanged, the conclusion is that nothing is happening. If symptoms remain, healing feels distant. If doors are closed, opportunity seems absent. But the unseen realm operates independently of immediate appearance. Movement can be underway even when there is no outward sign. Alignments can be forming. Barriers can be weakening. Answers can be approaching. Understanding this shifts the foundation of confidence. Instead of anchoring hope in what is currently visible, you anchor it in what has been spoken and promised. The unseen realm is not imaginary, it is foundational. It contains decisions, purposes, and power that eventually express themselves in the natural world. Just as wind is invisible yet moves trees and shapes landscapes, unseen forces shape visible outcomes. There is also a timing element. The unseen often works progressively. A seed does not erupt into a full-grown tree overnight. It develops layers of growth that remain hidden until the appointed moment. Likewise, restoration or breakthrough may be advancing in stages that are not immediately detectable. Patience becomes essential because the process does not always align with human urgency. The unseen realm also reminds you that reality is larger than immediate experience. A setback that looks final may only be temporary when viewed from a higher perspective. What appears blocked may actually be redirected. There are dimensions of purpose that exceed current understanding. Trusting that unseen governance is active allows peace to exist even before evidence appears. Faith functions within this dynamic. It is not blind optimism, it is confidence in unseen activity. It acknowledges that what is visible today does not represent the full story. Just as gravity works consistently whether acknowledged or not, spiritual principles operate beyond awareness. Promises, intentions, and divine purposes continue moving forward even when circumstances seem stagnant. To believe that the unseen governs the seen is to live with a deeper awareness. It means recognizing that today's visible conditions are not permanent verdicts. They are moments within a larger unfolding. What is hidden now can become visible later. What is intangible today can become tangible tomorrow. The roots beneath the soil determine the strength of the tree above it, and the unseen foundations of your life will ultimately shape what emerges into view. In Book of Isaiah 4:30-19, God does not speak in uncertainty. He says, "I will do a new thing." That statement carries authority and assurance. It is not a suggestion, not a possibility, not a hopeful wish. It is a declaration. When God says, "I will," it means the promise is already set in motion. The fulfillment may not yet be visible, but the commitment is firm. Understanding this changes the way hope is perceived. Hope is not fragile optimism. It is confidence anchored in a spoken word that cannot fail. People often treat promises as future events waiting to begin. They assume nothing is happening until they see change. But when God speaks, action begins immediately. His word does not sit idle. It activates purpose, sets processes into motion, and initiates unseen movement. Even if circumstances appear unchanged, the promise is not dormant. It is active. It is progressing toward fulfillment according to divine timing. Losing hope usually begins with focusing on delay. When results do not appear quickly, discouragement creeps in. The mind starts measuring the gap between expectation and reality. Questions surface. Has anything really changed? Did I misunderstand? Is this ever going to happen? These thoughts can slowly weaken confidence. Yet delay does not equal denial. The absence of visible proof does not cancel the validity of the promise. There is strength in recognizing that fulfillment often unfolds gradually. Just as dawn spreads light across the sky in stages, many promises manifest step by step. The first signs may be subtle, a shift in perspective, an unexpected opportunity, a quiet strengthening within. These small indicators reveal that something is advancing even before the full outcome appears. If you look only for dramatic change, you might miss the quiet beginnings. Hope becomes powerful when it is rooted in character rather than circumstance. If your confidence depends solely on what you see, it will fluctuate with every setback. But if it is grounded in who God is and what He has declared, it becomes steady. His nature does not shift with conditions. His integrity does not weaken with time. The promise remains intact, regardless of temporary appearances. There is also endurance built through sustained hope. Waiting refines trust. It teaches resilience. It strengthens patience. It deepens reliance. When you continue believing, despite visible delay, you develop stability that immediate gratification could never produce. Hope becomes less about emotion and more about conviction. It transforms from a feeling into a decision. The phrase, "shall spring forth," suggests inevitability. A spring does not struggle to emerge once the pressure beneath it builds. It bursts forth because the internal force compels it. In the same way, when the appointed time arrives, the promise will manifest with clarity. What seemed slow will suddenly feel swift. What seemed uncertain will become undeniable. Holding on to hope does not mean ignoring reality. It means interpreting reality through the lens of promise rather than through fear. You may acknowledge challenges while still affirming that they are temporary. You may recognize obstacles while trusting they are not final. Hope allows you to stand in present difficulty without surrendering expectation. When you understand that the promise is active, waiting feels different. It no longer feels empty. It feels purposeful. Something is unfolding beyond your view. The word spoken over your life is not fading with time. It is advancing toward expression. And as long as the one who said, "I will," remains faithful, hope remains justified, steady, and alive. Beloved, hold on a little longer. The wilderness is not your destination. The desert is not your dwelling place. It is only the stage upon which God reveals His glory. One day you will look back and say, "While I thought nothing was happening, everything was happening." Because the God of book of Isaiah 43:19 is still alive. He is still creating rivers. He is still making ways. And He is still working in the unseen. Don't lose hope. The new thing is already springing forth.